awesome, but I just haven't really been watching TV much, to be honest.
They're just so fucking quick.
So
Their
quick,
lines,
man.
bro, it's crazy.
Yeah, they're hilarious, man. Letterkenny's amazing.
I saw them live, actually.
Oh, did
I
you?
took my dad to see them live.
No way.
Yeah.
That's sick, man.
Good? Yep. Okay. Let's go. Okay. What's going on, boys? Hey, we're out here, Vancouver, BC. Canadians are representing this weekend, but I want to talk to the man who's sitting to my left right now, Mr. Mike Malott, proper Mike Malott. It's my pleasure to be working with you, bro. I heard you're linking with the NELK boys. You're going to be working with Full Send. You're representing us this weekend at UFC 289. So just talk to us a little bit about what's going on, brother.
Yeah, man. Super excited to be joining teams, man. This is awesome, man. I can't think of like a better collaboration for Canadian MMA right now between me and the NELK boys. Like this is so sick. Yeah, it's Thursday, so we're day before weigh-in, so we're starting to get a little skinny. We're starting to get a little hungry, but it's all good, man. All part of the process. Feel that hunger, feel that jittery energy run through the body. No, we're only 2 days away before I get to take this out on somebody.
Now, I do got to point that out as well, because my man is in the middle of cutting weight. It is the day before he's got to weigh in the next morning, so I want to shout out to you for taking the time to do this anyways, brother. But, bro, for the people that don't know, like, what is the Thursday night before weigh-ins like? Is there days where you're like, fuck, I don't even want to be an MMA fighter right now? Or is there days where you're like, you know what, I'm cruising right now?
I think a lot of it, for Thursday night especially, depends on how much you're cutting. Like, are you starting your cut tonight because you've got 14 to go for tomorrow because you've got 15, 16? Or are you eating a little bit, going to bed early and waking up and cutting it in the morning because you've only got, 7 or 8. So I don't have a ton to cut, so we'll likely be part of the latter group. But yeah, man, there's always like ups and downs, right? Throughout camp too, same thing. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing this for sometimes, But we know the why. We know the why, man. I love this. Like, I need this stuff. This molded me into who I am, and just thinking about like how far I've come from just being like a little kid in Waterdown to now being on like the main card of a pay-per-view in the UFC in Canada. I brought like a dry erase marker with me, and I always mark up my mirrors, and I started on that today, and the first thing I wrote was just like, you're the man you're the man you always wanted to be now. Like, this is who I've always wanted to be. I've always wanted to be like a guy. I've always wanted to be a UFC fighter. I've always wanted to be on pay-per-views. I've always wanted to be flown to amazing places and be able to do what I love to fight. So this is like seeing my dreams come to fruition before me. Like, I'm so blessed to be able to do this, Of course, there's moments where you're anxious or you're energetic or you're hungry or you're in pain or whatever, man. But I couldn't imagine not doing this. I'm so blessed to be able to live this life.
What was if you go back in time, you're talking about manifestation and like how big of a thing it can be when it comes to like achieving your goals and your careers and stuff like that. When was the exact moment when you were like, you know what, this is really gonna become a reality, and I'm just gonna drop everything and I'm gonna do this for a living?
I always kind of had like some form of delusion that it was going to work out and that I was going to get to this point, and it truly was delusion because I had no reason to believe it as a kid. I trained at like a local karate gym for the first couple of years of training, and I really just felt in my heart that this is where it was going to end up. But getting to Alpha Male helped me a lot, and seeing like those guys have a direct path to the UFC and seeing their journey and like actually knowing people who've climbed their ranks to the UFC and then within the UFC, and it felt different when I went to Alpha Male, where like when I was training on the east coast of Canada, I had an awesome team out there in Halifax, but it was like still a far off, distant dream. Like, I didn't really know anybody other than Roger Hollett, who fought in the UFC. And so it was still like a big maybe, it would be cool to get there type thing. Whereas when I went down to Alpha Male, it was like an expectation. It was like, so once you get to the UFC, this is what's gonna happen. And it was like, it didn't feel so far off anymore. I think coaching on Team Alpha Male helped a lot as well, where I spent like 20 some odd fight weeks with the UFC, with fighters, coaching guys here for fight week and feeling the fight week, getting to know the fight staff for the UFC, getting to know like what the process is and getting to actually make that walk, not just visualizing like what's it gonna feel like as the curtains open and I walk through that gate and it goes from like an echoey kind of distant crowd to immediately like a room of 20,000 people, right? So I've felt that so many times now. It was like dry runs, it was like rehearsals, it was getting me ready for this. And while I was always focused on my fighters, it was great for me to experience that firsthand. So it's made this jump from being like a regional MMA fighter to now a UFC fighter very seamless for me.
Do you have a plan per se? Because some guys come into the UFC and they don't really have a plan. They're happy to be there and say they get a couple of quick knockout wins, and the next thing you know, they get a call and they take a fight that they maybe shouldn't actually take, but they're going to take it because they're riding momentum and it's going to give them a shot at a guy that's, you know, a bit higher in the rankings than them. Are you a guy that kind of has it all mapped out? Like, look, you know, I'm going to get into the UFC, I'm going to fight the guys that I'm supposed to be fighting, work my way up, and eventually I'll get into that top 10, top 5? Or is there a part of you that also wants to take that chance and be like, look, you know, if they offer me a top, you know, 15, top 10 guy, hey, I'm not going to say no.
Well, to be honest, I don't think we're far off from getting the top 15 guy anyway. You know, I win this one. I think they'll probably realistically do one more, like a guy who's like somewhere between 15 and 25 or somewhere in there, or like a veteran that everybody knows, somebody who's established. That's kind of what I see as the next logical step. But after that next win, it's got to be a ranked guy. Like I'll be 4-0 in the UFC with 4 stoppages. We're gonna start climbing the ranks after that.
Is that what you wanted though, per se? Like, are you happy with the way that your career is progressing into the UFC?
Yeah, I love the way my career's progressed so far. I was blown away that my first fight was going to be against Mickey Gall. Like, I thought that would be the position I'm in now, like fight a couple Contender Series guys or like an Ultimate Fighter veteran or something like that, and then give me a big name. They threw me right in with a 10-fight UFC veteran right off the bat. You know, a well-established guy, a well-known guy. Everybody knows who Mickey Gall is, right? So it was like a big name right off the bat. So it really was a great introduction to the UFC community and UFC fans, like who I am and what I'm about. The first guy to knock out Mickey Gall, and so that couldn't have been a better debut. And then climbing the ranks slowly, as far as like I was then on the main card of a fight night. Now I'm on the main card of a pay-per-view in Canada. Like it's everything's climbing really quickly, and I'm really happy with it.
Now for the boys out there, the boys that support Full Send and the NELK boys, do you have a party story for us that you could possibly share?
I guess just like my first time drinking was a fun time. It was kind of like you know, Superbad-esque. Like it was a bunch of dorky, nerdy high school kids. We got a couple of kegs and went out into the bush and had a party by them. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
What's going on?
So, Superbad, right?
Yeah.
Who was McLovin in the story?
Who was McLovin in the story? I can't say the guy's name, but everyone who's watching from high school knows exactly who McLovin was from our high school. He's written in pretty much every desk of Hillfield, Strathallan, all of the high school. We all just, he was like a legend at our high school, man. That guy was hilarious. But yeah, so the first time we ever went drinking, this might have been kind of a combination of two, but I'm gonna say it was one, whatever. We went out, got a couple of kegs and went and had like a little bush party. And I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna drink. Like I was kind of late to the drinking, but I was like, whatever, I'm gonna go with it. We start drinking in this bush party right by like a highway, which is like a bunch of drunk high school kids like stumbling just on the edge of a highway. It was not the call, man. But we started drinking, and I don't know if somebody made like a bonfire or something, but the fire department got called. So the fire department came down, and so did the police, because you call the fire department, the police show up too, right? So everyone starts like freaking out. Looks like, you know, an anthill got kicked, everyone's dispersing, right? But some of my friends decided that was the first night they were gonna try hallucinogens, a couple of them. And they were just like, one of them was the McLovin guy, and we're like, oh dude, this is gonna be absolutely brutal. So we're just like watching these guys freak out all night. And then the cops come, so they start running into the forest and get completely lost. We all kind of circle back to my one buddy's house, and it's like over the course of an hour, it's like trickling back in, like me and the guy who that's his house, like we get back first, and then another buddy shows up, and we're just like slowly like, who's gonna come back next? Who's been rounded up? Who's been caught? And then finally, like, it felt like must have been 2 hours later, one of my buddies comes back in, who was one of the guys who was on some hallucinogens. He's like covered head to toe in mud. We're like, dude, what happened? He's like, dude, I ran. I was by myself. I didn't see where anyone was. He's like, I thought the only way, he's like, the cops started getting closer and closer to me. So I just like kind of hid in like a marsh, and like the cops, like I felt like they were about to step on me, like walking by. I barely made it. He's like, I was like incognito rubbing mud on my face so that they couldn't see me, and then ran back and finally got back to our buddy's house. I'm like, dude, we thought for sure you ended up getting arrested. You know, you're so dramatic when you're a kid, right? Like, oh, they're gonna know he's drunk and on drugs, he's going to prison or something like that, right? But no, it was a fun time, man. It really felt like our super bad moment.
Do you remember what you were drinking at the time? Because I remember like when we were fresh out of high school, it was just the most disgusting. It was like Old English, or like 2 liters of Growers cider, or like shitty Smirnoff vodka.
Yeah, no, it was I don't know what it was, but it was probably whatever the cheapest keg of beer was. I remember multiple times someone being like, yeah, I got a keg of beer for the kegger. We're like, oh, awesome. And it's like red amber beer, so just so heavy. So you're playing like drinking games and everyone's guts like so full and heavy. Yeah. It's so gross. But yeah, so those guys who had the rough night especially, I didn't know that like you can just get salvia at a convenience store, dude. So that's what they did. I'd never heard of this stuff before. They're like, yeah, I got this. I'm like, oh shit, what shady thing did you get this from? They're like, no, I just got it from a convenience store. I'm like, you can just buy shit like that at the store? Like, okay. Yeah, my buddy was freaking out. He's like, did some of that, and he's like, right before the cops come, he's like, dude, I'm in a puzzle and I can't get out. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot, man. Like, I'm sure he was playing it up even more than, you know, whatever he was actually feeling or tripping out about, but it was just like a funny night.
Yeah, listen, bro, I'm glad we got Happy Dad and we don't have to drink, you know, Canadian piss beer.
Oh, man, it was brutal. Yeah.
I gotta ask you, out of all the boys, like Steve, Kyle, Salim, Steiny, Gambles, which one of them do you think could actually train if they wanted to?
Well, I feel like, okay, from the first NELK Boy video I ever saw, I'm gonna go with Kyle, because the first NELK Boy video I ever saw was Kyle asking Khabib if he thinks he could train for a while and beat up Jorge Masvidal, because he was like, oh yeah, Jorge Masvidal slept with my girlfriend, like how long do you think it would take for me to train to beat up Masvidal? And Khabib's like, I think you might be out of luck. Your buddy's like, he said something along the lines of like, you by yourself? No way. You with dog? Maybe. Okay. So yeah, Kyle, get some training in and a big ass dog and you're good to go, bud.
Yeah, he said go get him a dog. There was another one back in the day where he walked into UFC gyms and he was looking at people and he says, you know, they call me Conor McGregor Jr. And he would look at them and he like, you want to see my 1-2 Mayweather? And he would like throw the cheesiest 1-2. And he would just like, true Kyle fashion, he'd keep chirping him and be like, listen, you want to spar? Meet me in the cage, bud. You know, like, yeah, bro. So what do you think, if you spend a night out with these guys, if the boys, you know, take you out after the UFC win, you know, what do you think that's going to be like, partying with the Nub boys?
I think it's going to be sweet, man. We got to get some Happy Dad in the situation, right? Got to bring some of that, smuggle some of that into Canada. I don't think they're selling it yet, right? So early next year. Yeah, they're saying January. We're allowed to say January. That's what John told me. We're allowed to say January, maybe. Yeah, man, those guys are wild. I think it'll be a hilarious night. Just seeing some wild stuff happen, like bring me back to the college days, you know, of just being like an absolute shit disturber, right? Like I love those days back in college and back in high school, just going out and being ridiculous. Like Another good drinking story that's I was just telling a buddy about. I don't know why I didn't think of this one too. It's not like a big party story. It's just like you be in like shit disturbers with your friends. Where we were out at a bar in Halifax with my roommates, and we would like collect stuff for the house, right? So we go out to a bar. It's like somebody steals a couple mugs or somebody steals something like that, right? Just like, and it was like more like a trophy type thing for the house. There's 5 of us living on like one flat. It was real tight knit situation, but it was actually a blast. But my buddies had a few too many, and they had, I think they called it like a prowler, and it was like kind of like it was a tube of ice with like beer poured all around it from a keg, and so it was basically like so bartenders didn't have to keep coming back and forth to your table or like bring pitchers. So it would have like 10 beers in it or whatever, and then you guys would have your own mug, so you'd pour your own beer, and then they'd refill that like once an hour or whatever. And he's like, dude, we need this for the house. So we're sitting by the emergency exit, and Halifax is all on a hill, so this is an important detail, right? The bar's on like a hill. So he's like, right by the emergency exit, he's like, yo, cover me, it's winter, so he's got a big jacket on. He's like, I'm gonna bring this prowler. He's got this massive thing in his hand, and then, or in his coat, and then 2 glass beer mugs, like classic, like almost like Simpsons style classic ones, right? So he's got those like this. He's like, okay, cover me. Let me know when I can go. And we're like, all right, ready? And go. So he runs, and our friend kicks open the emergency door for him to run out. But Halifax is on a hill, so he's expecting to land like on the ground, and there's like 4 stairs down. He misses the stairs and just plants his hands through these 4 glass bottles, plants his chest through this glass like prowler thing, and just gets up and guns it. We're like, oh shit, are you okay? And he was just way too embarrassed and absolutely sailed home, right? So we all are like laughing but worried about him, so we cab home, and he's at the house by the time we get there, and just like his hands are chewed. Like it looks like he put his hands in a blender, right? He's like, guys, I think we might need to go to the hospital. And we're like, no, we're good. We got glue. We're trying to like sanitize and glue his hands shut, all hammered, like no hand-eye coordination at 2 a.m, right? Just an absolute slop fest.
I think we can all attest to a couple of stories like that. But
Yeah.
I think we can.
Yeah,
And for people that don't know, Halifax is on it's the east coast of Canada, and there's some pretty greasy people out east, isn't there?
Dude, I love Halifax, man. I love like when I was living there, so I went to Dalhousie University out there, and I trained out there. That was like where I made I had my first few pro fights, first few Muay Thai fights. I was like, I'm never leaving here. I love it. I loved Halifax. It's got like such a great feel. Everybody's so friendly. Like strangers will just chat with you. Like it's no one's in a rush. Like it's a much slower pace. I loved Halifax, man.
It was the origin of the Trailer Park Boys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I first got out there, they still had Bubbles Mansion. I never got in. They closed down before I ever got there. But Bubbles Mansion was a bar out there. We'd see like the Trailer Park Boys every once in a while, like saw them on Canada Day out drinking, or we'd see like Leahy at the liquor store.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. man. Oh, that was a tough one. And then I ended up fighting in Toronto, and I got to the event, and I go to meet one of the promoters, and it's Caveman Sam. Caveman Sam was the promoter. Dude, it was sick. I was like, no way, Caveman Sam. He's like, yeah, man, I'm a promoter now. I'm like, so shout out to Sam, man. That was awesome.
Oh, jeez. All right, Mike, listen, I won't keep you too much longer. We talked some Trailer Park Boys. We talked some party stories. We talked NELK Boys. Mm-hmm. You got anything else to add before we get out of here?
Tune in Saturday night, man. We're gonna put on a show, dude. I'm getting that 10th stoppage. That 10th stoppage in my career. It's happening.
Listen, it's only up from here, baby.
Yes, sir.